My mother-in-law locked me in a bathroom while I was giving birth at my sister-in-law's wedding. She kept partying while I screamed for help. But when my husband found out the truth, the entire family destroyed her. I'm 29 years old. My name is Angela. And 3 months ago, I gave birth to my daughter Jade under circumstances that I still have trouble believing actually happened. The thing is that my mother-in-law, Betty, literally locked me in a bathroom while I was in labor during my sister-in-law Allison's wedding. And when I say literally, I mean she left me there screaming for help while she calmly went off to enjoy the ceremony like nothing was happening. I need to tell this story because there are days when I wake up thinking that maybe I dreamed it, that it can't be real, that someone would do something like that. But my husband Stephen is here reminding me every day that yes, it did happen, and that his mother almost cost me and our daughter our lives. I guess I should start from the beginning. When Stephen and I met about 6 years ago at a work conference, you know, one of those super boring things where everyone is half asleep after lunch. He worked in finance and I worked in human resources. And we basically became friends because we were the only ones under 40 inches the entire room. We got married 3 years ago. And for the first 2 years, everything was relatively normal with Betty. I mean, yes, she was a bit intense. Like she would always call to find out what we were doing on Sundays, or she'd show up unannounced with food she had prepared, but nothing that screamed red flag. You know what I mean? Stephen is her only son. He has 2 sisters. Allison, who is a year younger than him, and Brittany, who's 24. And it was always obvious that Betty adored him in a special way. But I thought it was normal. You know, the typical mother-son attachment thing. Everything changed when I got pregnant about a year and a half ago. It was planned, we wanted to have children, and when we told the family, everyone was super excited, or at least it seemed that way. Betty cried and hugged us and said she was happy that she was finally going to be a grandmother that she had waited for. This moment for years. What we didn't know was that Jade was going to be the first grandchild in the family, like the first baby in general, and that apparently unleashed something in Betty that none of us saw coming. Allison had gotten engaged about 6 months before I got pregnant, and she had asked me to be one of her bridesmaids along with Brittany and 2 of her work friends. I was super excited because Allison and I got along really well from the beginning. None of that typical drama of sisters-in-law who hate their brother's wife. She genuinely wanted me in her life. When I found out I was pregnant, I did the math and realized that my due date was going to fall about 2 or 3 weeks after the wedding, so I thought there wouldn't be a problem. But my doctor told me that first babies sometimes come early, and that with the stress of wedding preparations and all that, maybe it wasn't a good idea to commit to standing all day in heels and a tight dress. So I called Allison. I think it was around month 3 of my pregnancy, and I explained the situation. I told her, "Look, I don't want to ruin your perfect day if I suddenly go into labor in the middle of the ceremony or something. Maybe it's better if you find someone else to replace me." And she, God bless her, basically told me I was crazy if I thought she was going to be upset about something like that obviously my health and the babies were more important, and that she wanted me at the wedding as a guest to celebrate with them anyway. Brittany ended up being the main maid of honor in my place, and everything seemed to be fine. But it was about a month after that conversation that Betty started acting weird with me. At first they were small comments, like when we'd see each other for Sunday dinner, she'd say things like, "Oh, Angela, you look so tired. Are you sure the pregnancy is agreeing with you?" Or when Stephen would mention something about preparing the baby's room, she'd say, "Well, don't get too excited. You never know what can happen in a pregnancy." Things like that left you with that uncomfortable feeling in your stomach, but that weren't obvious enough to confront her directly about. Stephen noticed it too, but always tried to justify it. He'd say that his mom was probably nervous because it was the first grandchild and that sometimes older people say weird things without thinking. By month 6, I was pretty big. You know? That stage where you can't see your feet and every time you sit down you need help getting up? Betty started visiting us more often, like 3 or 4 times a week, always with the excuse of bringing food or helping with something in the house. But what she really did was basically supervise me. Like she'd stand there watching me while I folded baby clothes or assembled the crib, and she'd make passive-aggressive comments about how I did things. One day I told Stephen that his mother was driving me crazy, and he finally talked to her, told her that she needed to give us a little space, that we appreciated her help but that we also needed time to prepare as a couple. She cried. Obviously. Said she only wanted to help, and that she didn't understand why I was pushing her away from her son and her grandchild, who wasn't even born yet. Things calmed down a bit after that conversation. Betty stopped showing up so often. But when we saw her at family dinners or events, she basically ignored me. Like, she'd talk to Steven all the time, ask him how he was, how work was going, if he needed anything. But she wouldn't even look at me. If I tried to join the conversation, she would just turn around or change the subject. Allison noticed it too, and told me privately that her mom had been acting super weird lately, that she had mentioned something about feeling like I was trying to push Steven away from the family, which was total craziness because I had always tried to maintain a good relationship with everyone. I never told Steven not to see his family or anything like that. Allison's wedding was planned for a Saturday in early October at a beautiful place about an hour from the city, like an old mansion converted into an event venue. My due date was October 20th, which was like 2.5 weeks after the wedding, so my doctor gave me the green light to attend as long as I felt okay and didn't do anything too strenuous. By that point, I was already 8 months and a week along. I basically looked like I had swallowed a basketball, but I felt relatively good, apart from the typical back pain and the fact that I had to pee every 15 minutes. Steven was a little nervous about us going, but I told him we'd be fine, that it was important to be there for Allison and Nathan, her fiancé, and that besides, we were going to drive together, so if anything happened, we could leave immediately. The wedding day arrived, and it was one of those perfect fall days. You know, with a super blue sky and the tree leaves in all those orange and red colors. We arrived around 2 in the afternoon because the ceremony was at 4, and the plan was that first there would be a cocktail hour, then the ceremony, and then the reception with dinner and dancing. I wore a navy blue dress that I had bought specifically for pregnant women, like one of those that are elegant but comfortable, and low shoes because there was no way I was going to survive the day in heels. Betty was there when we arrived, obviously, helping with the last-minute details because she was the mother of the groom. Wait, no, not the groom. Steven was the bride's brother, so Betty was the mother of the bride, period. She saw me arrive and basically made a face, like one of those you try to hide but can't, and then she turned around and continued arranging flowers or whatever she was doing. Everything was going well, actually. The cocktail hour was nice. There were canapes and champagne, although I was obviously drinking sparkling water, and people would come up to touch my belly and ask when the baby would be born and if we knew the sex. All those typical things people ask when you're pregnant. Allison looked absolutely beautiful in her dress, and she gave me a huge hug when she saw me and thanked me for coming despite how uncomfortable it probably was for me to be there. I told her I wouldn't miss it for the world and that I was happy to see her so happy. Around 3:30, I started to feel like I needed to go to the bathroom, which wasn't anything new because I had basically spent the last 2 months going to the bathroom every half hour. So I told Steven I was going to go upstairs to the bathroom because the one downstairs had a line, the mansion had 3 floors, and there were bathrooms on each level. The one upstairs, on the 2nd floor, was the nicest and was at the end of a long hallway, like one of those old bathrooms with vintage tiles and a bathtub with legs. I went up the stairs slowly because at that point, climbing stairs was the whole event. And when I got to the bathroom, I went in and closed the door. And it was there, while I was peeing, that I felt something weird, like an internal pop followed by a gush of liquid. At first, I thought maybe I had peed myself, which would have been super embarrassing, but not impossible given how big I was. But then I realized that the liquid kept coming out and that it definitely wasn't pee. My first thought was, no, this can't be happening. The wedding hasn't even started. But there I was, standing in the bathroom with my underwear soaked and liquid running down my legs, and my second thought was, okay, Angela, breathe, this is normal, your water broke, you need to call Steven right now. I took my phone out of my bag and was about to call him when I heard someone knock on the bathroom door. I thought maybe it was another guest who needed to get in, so I said, 1 moment please, I'm busy. But then I heard Betty's voice saying, Angela, it's me. Are you okay in there? And I, honestly without thinking much because I was starting to panic a little, opened the door and she was standing there with this face I can't even describe. Like between worried and something else I couldn't identify at the moment. I told her, Betty, my water broke. I need to find Steven right now. We need to go to the hospital. And she came into the bathroom, closed the door behind her, and told me, it's okay, calm down, let me see. What happened next is something I still have trouble processing. Betty looked at me, saw the puddle of liquid on the floor, and then took my phone from my hand. I was confused. I told her, what are you doing? Give me my phone. I need to call Steven. And she said, Angela, we can't ruin Allison's day. The ceremony is about to start. You just need to calm down and wait a bit. I told her she was crazy, that my water had broken and that meant the baby was coming, that I couldn't just wait. But she got between me and the door and said, "You're going to stay here, quietly for an hour, just 1 hour until the ceremony is over, and then we'll tell Stephen and everything will be fine." I tried to push past her to get out, but she's a big woman, like she's about 5'9" and weighs quite a bit more than me, and at that moment I was basically a walking ball that could barely move fast. The next thing I know is that Betty went out of the bathroom, and I heard the key turn in the lock from the outside. I stood there for like 30 seconds processing what had just happened, before I started pounding on the door and screaming. I was shouting, "Let me out! Betty, open this door right now!" But I couldn't hear anything on the other side. Then I started screaming for Stephen. I was shouting his name over and over. And help! Help me. I'm locked in. But the bathroom was on the second floor at the end of the hallway, and downstairs, there was music playing and people talking and getting ready for the ceremony. No one could hear me. I kept screaming until I literally lost my voice, until all I could do were like hoarse whispers. And by that point, like 15 or 20 minutes had passed and I was starting to feel contractions. Like not the strong active labor contractions yet, but those contractions that tell you things are getting serious. I tried to open the bathroom window, but it was stuck, like painted shut. And even if I could have opened it, I was on the second floor and there was no way I could climb down being 8 months pregnant without killing myself in the attempt. I looked for something to break the door with, but all there was were towels and bathroom products. Nothing useful. Then I thought about the bathtub. I thought maybe if I filled the tub with hot water that would help with the pain until someone finally found me. But at that moment, a strong contraction hit me, like one of those that doubles you over. And I had to sit on the bathroom floor and breathe like they had taught me in childbirth preparation classes. I kept trying to scream, but my voice wasn't working anymore. Only these pathetic sounds came out that probably no one could hear even if they were standing outside the bathroom. I don't know how much time passed. I honestly lost track of time because when you're in labor and locked in a bathroom against your will, time becomes something super weird. The contractions got more frequent and more intense, and at some point I started to have that feeling that I needed to push. That horrible pressure that makes you think the baby is going to come out any moment. I cried, screamed what little I could, banged on the walls, tried to kick the door even though I knew it wouldn't do any good. I was thinking about Stephen downstairs not knowing where I was, probably starting to worry that I hadn't come back, but also probably assuming I had just run into someone to chat with, or that I was helping with something last minute. I was thinking about Jade inside me, trying to come out, and how this was nothing like the birth we had planned. It wasn't in the hospital with doctors and an epidural and Stephen holding my hand. At some point, I don't know exactly when, but probably about 40 minutes after Betty locked me in, I basically passed out. The contractions were too much, the pain was too much, and the panic and dehydration and everything won out. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness is thinking, "God, please let someone find me. Please let my baby be okay." And then, nothing. Everything black. When I woke up, I was in an ambulance with Stephen holding my hand and crying, telling me everything was going to be okay, that we were almost at the hospital. I was confused. I didn't understand how I had gotten there. And I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't come out. Stephen told me, "Don't talk, my love. You hurt your throat from screaming so much. But you're okay now. I found you. You're safe." We got to the hospital and everything was super fast after that. They took me directly to the delivery room and about 20 minutes later Jade was born, healthy and perfect and screaming with all her lungs. They put her on my chest and I could only cry and touch her little face and make sure she was real, that she was alive, that we had both survived. Afterwards, when things calmed down and I was in the recovery room with Jade in my arms and Stephen sitting next to me, he told me what had happened. He said that after the ceremony, which according to him was around 5 or 5:30, which was like an hour and a half after Betty locked me in, he started wondering where I was. He looked for me everywhere, asked people if they had seen me, and finally went to look for his mother to ask her if she knew anything. And she, with a completely straight face, told him yes, that she had seen me go up to the second-floor bathroom and that it looked like I was in labor. Stephen told me he basically went crazy. He yelled at his mother asking why the fuck she hadn't told him immediately, and she responded that she hadn't wanted to ruin Allison's wedding. He ran up the stairs, found the bathroom locked, kicked the door until he broke the lock, and found me unconscious on the bathroom floor with a pool of blood and amniotic fluid around me. Betty apparently confessed everything to him while they were waiting for the ambulance to arrive. She told him that she had thought she only needed an hour, that after the ceremony she was going to tell him and everything would be fine, that she hadn't wanted me to ruin Allison's special day with my pregnancy drama. Those were literally her words, my pregnancy drama, as if giving birth was something I had chosen to do specifically to screw up someone else's day. Stephen told me he yelled things at her that he never thought he'd be capable of saying to his mother. He told her she was dead to him, that he was never going to forgive her, that he was going to call the police and press charges against her for what she had done. The thing is that I was so exhausted, so physically and emotionally destroyed, that when Stephen told me he wanted to press charges against Betty, I told him no, that I didn't have the energy to deal with that I just wanted to focus on Jade and recovering. He didn't agree, but he respected my decision, although he made me promise that if she tried to approach us or the baby, then yes, we were going to do something about it. That first night in the hospital was surreal, like beautiful and traumatic at the same time. Allison, Brittany, and Nathan showed up around 11 at night, still in their wedding clothes, with flowers and balloons and tears in their eyes. Allison hugged me and apologized like 1,000 times, even though none of this was her fault. She said that if she had known what her mother was doing, she would have canceled the wedding without thinking twice. We took pictures of Jade with them, like these super weird but beautiful photos of my newborn baby with the bride and groom in their dress and suit, and Allison told me those were going to be her favorite photos from her entire wedding day. We spent 3 days in the hospital, basically standard time after a vaginal birth, and during that time Stephen talked to his entire family. His father, who had divorced Betty about 10 years ago, was horrified when he found out what she had done. Allison and Brittany told him they didn't want to have contact with their mother for the time being, that they needed to process what had happened. Stephen's grandparents, Betty's parents, also found out and basically told her she needed psychological help because what she had done wasn't normal. The entire family, literally everyone, took our side, and that was something we didn't expect but were immensely grateful for. We thought that after that Betty would stay quiet, that she would understand she had crossed an unforgivable line and would leave us alone. But no. About 2 weeks after we got home with Jade, like at 1 in the morning, we heard loud pounding on the door. Stephen went down to see what was happening, and it was Betty, screaming that she wanted to see her granddaughter, that she had a right as a grandmother, that we couldn't keep her away from her blood. Stephen told her to leave or he was going to call the police, and she started crying and begging, saying she was sorry, that she hadn't thought things through, that she had only wanted to protect Allison's wedding, as if that justified endangering her granddaughters and daughter-in-law's lives. She eventually left, but only after Stephen told her he had already dialed 911. The following days were a nightmare of messages and calls. Betty called us like 20 times a day from different numbers because we had blocked hers. She sent us super disturbing text messages, like saying that Jade was her first granddaughter, and that she had waited for this moment her whole life, that I had no right to keep her away from her baby, that I had always been selfish, and that now I was using Jade to punish her. In one of the messages, she literally wrote that she had done what she did because she was jealous that I was going to get all the attention with the baby and that she wanted Allison to have a perfect day without me ruining it for her. I mean, she basically admitted that she had put my life and my daughter's life at risk out of jealousy and control. Brittany, who was studying psychology in college, suggested to Stephen that maybe his mom needed a professional psychiatric evaluation, that level of behavior wasn't rational. So Allison, who worked in the healthcare system, managed to coordinate an evaluation with a well-known psychiatrist. The results were surprising and not surprising at the same time. She didn't have any severe psychiatric illness, no diagnosable personality disorder beyond generalized anxiety, which honestly half the population has. The doctor basically said that Betty was a person with controlling and narcissistic tendencies who had acted irrationally due to a combination of jealousy, need for control, and an inability to process that her son had formed his own family, where she was no longer the #1 priority. After that, the entire family agreed that we needed legal protection. We went to a lawyer and requested a restraining order against Betty, both for me and for Jade. The process was horrible. I had to tell what happened in front of a judge and show the disturbing messages and photos of the injuries on my throat from screaming so much. The judge granted us the order for 2 years, with the possibility of renewal, saying that what Betty had done constituted danger to a minor and to me. Betty hired a lawyer who tried to argue that it had all been a misunderstanding, that she had panicked and made a bad decision, but that she hadn't actively tried to hurt us. The judge didn't believe her for a second. Now it's been 3 months since Jade was born. She's perfect, healthy, reaching all her developmental milestones without problem. I physically recovered well from childbirth, although emotionally, it's been a more complicated journey. I have nightmares sometimes, where I'm back in that bathroom, pounding on the door and screaming with no one hearing me. I started therapy about a month ago, and that's helped quite a bit. Stephen has been incredible through all of this. Like, he's also in therapy, processing what his mother did and dealing with the fact that he basically lost his mom because of the decisions she made. Allison and Brittany come visit us often, help with Jade, and we've formed an even closer relationship after all this. Betty tried to send a letter last month, like one of those long apology letters where she explained her version of events and asked for another chance. Stephen read it and then tore it up. He asked me if I wanted to know what it said, and I told him no, that there was nothing she could say that would change what she did. The restraining order is still in effect, and we'll renew it when it expires. Some extended family members have tried to advocate for her, saying everyone deserves second chances and that it's sad that a grandmother can't meet her granddaughter, but the truth is that Betty had her chance to be part of Jade's life and she ruined it in the worst possible way. Last week, Jade laughed for the first time, like that baby laugh that sounds like little hiccups, and Stephen and I just sat there in the living room watching her and laughing with her. And in that moment, I thought about everything we went through to have her here, about how close we came to losing her, and I realized that despite all the trauma and pain, we have something beautiful. We have a family that supports us unconditionally, we have a healthy daughter, and we have each other, and that, I guess, is more than a lot of people have after going through something like this.